people from so many different places. Mawa, I just wanted to remind you, you said you wanted to record this, so I wasn't sure if you had already started.
I just started.
Okay, all right. Great, so we will get started. So we will be talking today about job search and job search tools. Erin is the expert more on the recruitment and client side. As Mawa introduced us, I'm more on the coaching side, so we both bring different perspectives that will be interesting. But we definitely want to encourage you also to please let us know your thoughts in the chat. If you have specific questions that we can answer for you, we would love to be able to do that. There are going to be times that we may defer you to some other resources as well, and we'll let you know when that arises. Also, it's probably very difficult at this time. You've probably been on several Zoom meetings already today, except for Erin, where it's 6 a.m. So, but please minimize distractions, although if you are having to leave the webinar, it is being recorded so you can listen to it later. But we really look forward to your participation in this interaction. There was already a brief introduction for me, so I don't have to go into much detail. I will tell you my headline is my passion is supporting people to maximize their potential. That's what I've been doing as an HR internal professional and now as an executive coach for many, many years, and pleased to be able to share my knowledge with you today. Erin, anything you want to add to your introduction?
No, I think Mahu did a great job. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. Michelle and I have been in touch and have worked together in the past, so I was thrilled and honored that you invited me to participate. So glad to be here. Sorry it's still a little dark outside, but the sun should come up here momentarily. So yeah, thanks for having me.
The sun is starting to shine. There we go.
Yeah.
And in some locations, the sun is just setting. So,
right.
So quick agenda for today. It's our intention to share with you some practical tips, get you thinking about how to give your job search a boost. If you're already in job search, we may give you some pointers and things that you hadn't already thought about. We hope that you gain some insights and get started on a plan of action. We are very results and action oriented here at the Star and Me, and we really want you to be able to get something meaningful out of this. Again, I re-invite you to add any information to the chat that you might have some questions. So I'm noticing already in the chat, I'll try to keep my eye on this as best as I possibly can. So from JS has asked, how has the current situation impacted the gig economy for experts and consultants? I can talk a little bit about that, and point to any resources for independent consultants offering micro consulting, expert consulting services. Okay, so we will talk about that when we talk about the resources that are available to people online. JS, it would be helpful for us to know also where you're located, if you are, what country at least you're in, so that we can maybe give some more specific examples. All right, so we would love to know a little bit more about you. So you already told us where you're dialing in from. It would be very interesting for us to know also what season you are in your career. So in the chat, if you are less than 8 years in your career, or if you're in that 8 to 15 year sweet spot, if you're over 15 years in your career, that would also be interesting. I always put none of the above in there. It's kind of just as a joke, because probably you fall into A, B, or C. So if I see D, I'll be very interested to know what that means. But wait a second here, and I see some B's, some A's, quite a few C's actually. That's interesting. Okay. A, just a year out of college. Nice, good. Okay, so we have a blend. So what's really interesting, oftentimes some experts actually talk about the seasons of your career, where what you're looking for in the first 8 years of your career and what you're looking to get out of your career during your 8 to 15 years, where you might be having many more challenges around work-life balance, or you are looking to advance at a more rapid pace because of your expertise. And when you're over 15 years in your career, oftentimes you have followed an area of expertise and specialty that you've been in for a long time. And as a coach, what I've spent most of my time doing is working with people in the B and C category who are ambitious and looking to advance in their career, either take a next step within the traditional career path, but oftentimes after about 10 or 15 years in your career, you're questioning whether or not you are going to still do the same thing you've been doing for the next 10 or 15 years, or are you looking to make a move? So our next question to inform us around that would ask that you also put in the chat now, are you looking for another job, and if you're actively in a job search, you would really like more challenge in your role. You aren't necessarily leaving the company, but I do a lot of coaching for people who are trying to advance even within their own company. Or if you're ready for an advancement opportunity and not getting it in your company and not sure why, then you would indicate A in the chat. If you like what you're doing and you've been doing it in your 8 to 15 year time frame, or 15 years or more, and you like what you're doing, but now you're feeling like it's not a long-term career fit. And that's really interesting, because a lot of people follow a path that they thought was a good fit for them early in their career because they got a certain degree, or they are doing something that somebody else said they would be very good at. And what happens is during your time in those jobs, the work may not actually inspire you. Actually, you come home more tired than energized. I like to say, are you inspired or tired when I'm coaching with my people? And if you love what you're doing, you are energized by what you're doing. Erin and I love what we do. We get energy from this. There's no way this tires us out. But if you're feeling drained and would love to feel more fulfilled and energized, that would be interesting for us to know. And the last option is, I really don't like what I'm doing. I'm actively looking to make a major change, or you're in some kind of a scenario or situation where you're out of work and you're currently seeking. So we would love to know more about you if you can indicate that. I'm seeing a lot of C's in the chat. There's an A. A, B, okay. Hard to decide between one or the other. Usually I do this in a poll, so you would have to decide one or the other, but nice to see in the chat. Okay, see, so Enix says, seeking to restart my career after 10 years out to raise my kids. So that's also, I do a lot of career coaching with women who are re-entering the workforce as well. So you are not alone. I also do a lot of coaching with women who are making a significant switch in their career. So they actually did a career for 8 or 10 years, went back to school, and now are looking to get into a job that they don't feel they have any qualifications for. So I help them to work on their transferable skills and talk about things that help them in their job search as well. So Stephanie says same thing, more challenge and a new role, wanted more challenge, now want to start a new career. So that none of you are alone in terms of if you're looking for a new role, or if you're looking for better fit, or if you're looking for more challenge. If you'd ever like to talk to me more, I'm on the Star and Me platform. I am one of the coaches. But I'm happy to also have just a casual conversation with you. Erin, any observations or anything you want to add before we move on?
Yeah, I think we'll probably get into it a little bit more, but certainly, in the recruiting field, as you know, Michelle, we often are working with candidates just as you described that are, in a lot of cases looking to take on new challenges and build careers in new industries that they've not worked. So really helping to identify how your experience will translate into this new field that you're pursuing is, certainly something that hopefully most recruiters in our field are prepared to help work with you on. So yeah, that's definitely an area of passion for me, and certainly see a lot of, moms coming out of full time, taking care of their children and wanting to get back into the workforce. I'm very passionate about that as well. So
Yes, absolutely. So you've already taken step one. Those of you who answered the question in the chat, you've already taken a first step in even boosting your job search, because a lot of people that we talk to actually are looking to us for guidance to help them figure out what they're looking for. And so having clarity on what job and work environment you're looking for and why really helps when obviously you're doing your own job search, but also working with any kind of a recruiter. So here's some questions that are inspired to help prompt you to think more, even more deeply about your why. Any of you who are Simon Sinek fans, I'm a huge fan of his, and start with why. What gets you excited about your work? Why are you enjoying it? Who are the people that you're working with, that you're serving? What purpose does it serve? And how does that align with what gets you really excited about work? And if you don't love what you've been doing, can you reframe it? Can you make it less of a, I don't care for what I'm doing, and more for what have you learned throughout the time that you've been working that will help you pursue your next job, your next career move, your conversations that you'll be having with recruiters and hiring managers. The most important thing is to give the impression that you're not walking away from something, but you're walking towards something new. And if that doesn't resonate with you, then again, a coach or a recruiter can really help you work through those things. It's so important when you're branding yourself and you're creating this job search persona for yourself that you're doing it in a very positive attitude way. And are you looking for your next job or a longer term career move? And that, in this time, in this unprecedented time, it's really important to know that answer. Because if you've been furloughed or laid off, or you're in a situation where you're not working, you might be tempted to just take the next job that's available for you, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, if you are thinking about a longer career move, now's not a bad time to be thinking about that either, because there's a lot of change going on, and we'll talk about that. And also, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to add, during this time, I'm finding that I'm reaching out to or have been reached out to by folks that I've worked with a decade ago that are just really networking. So as you are looking for a career change or just looking for employment in general, I think it's really important to leverage your network, but also continue to build your network. So don't be afraid to reach out to people via LinkedIn and some of these other social networking tools and inquire. If you're looking for that career change, ask those questions. It's hard for us, I think, sometimes to really just slow down and think through some of these questions that Michelle has just presented. But it's really, really important that you think about what really drives you and what you're passionate about, and then seek out people that are in that field and doing some of the work that you're looking for, so that it can answer your questions. And then that way you go in a lot more prepared to help translate your experience to the new field that you're pursuing.
Absolutely. That's terrific. We'll build on that a little bit later. It's interesting that you bring that up, Erin, because a lot of the work I'm doing right now with women who are in transition is really just helping them figure out the answers to these 3 questions. And it takes 2 or 3 hours so 2 or 3 sessions that I'm working with them on before we even get to things like the resume, the profile. It's really about digging a little deeper into what it is you want to find so that you can find it, and not jumping right into it and connecting with. I have as well had so many people reach out to me in the last 3 weeks and reconnect because they're in the job search now. So the other thing I wanted to point out is, have you thought about what's really important right now? So all of us are working from home, and are we now getting used to and in a new frame of mind way of working from home and actually enjoying it, where in the future we want more flexibility, more telecommute options, where in the past a lot of the work that we were doing maybe was office only. So those are things to think about. And if you did fall into the A category and you are ready for that next level opportunity, thinking through what are the right next steps for you. And talking with a recruiter or a career coach can really help you to target what that next level opportunity should be. We have also a question on Q2, any pointers to companies consulting that are moving towards an open talent network model. So we probably won't get into specific companies in this conversation. We'll talk more generally, but feel free to email us. We will have our email addresses at the end, or you can always send a very specific question to the Star Network at hello@thestarinme.com. More than happy to talk through any questions that you have that are specific for your particular job search. And lastly, you'll see at the end of a lot of our slides are some highlights. And so again, summarizing, can you clearly articulate what and why? What is it you're looking for, and why is this something that you're really passionate about? Those are the things that we encourage you to think about clarity. Next up, this is again me just being a career coach for just a half a second. Getting even more clarity, there's ways you can do this on your own. So you don't necessarily need to talk to a career coach or a recruiter if you want to get started doing some self-development or some digging a little deeper on your own. How to inform your why is, I look at this in 3 different buckets. So what are your natural strengths? Sometimes I have fun talking to people about their superpowers. What are they really, really good at? And maybe they even take it for granted on their own, but other people recognize it in them. So examples are things like, I'm working with a client right now who is able to take information and data from multiple reports and synthesize them into something that is actually actionable. You may take that for granted. If you work in finance or if you work in IT, you may take those things for granted. But those, to me, are natural strengths and superpowers, because not everybody has those. So what are those things that really differentiate you? And then your preferences and your personality type. Preferences might be more like the work environment. So somebody asked about the open work environment. A lot of people would prefer a cubicle to an open work environment. Some people do prefer to work from home. Some people have preferences like that. And the personality types are things like, are you a more direct person? Are you a more passive person? How are you in terms of managing people? What is your leadership style? So there's so many different assessments that are available to you. You'll see at the bottom footnote there's Clifton Strengths if you've never taken the Strengths Finder. It's about $49 US, so not a huge investment if you're interested. 16 personality factors, or the 16 PF, is a really interesting assessment too. It costs online about 20 bucks. DISC you can actually take online for free, and there are many other styles and preference tests that you can take online for free. Go to 123test.com And you can take, I think there's IQ tests on there. There's so many assessments that will help you to figure out more about yourself and understand more about yourself. And then adding to that, passions and interests. So if you can figure out how to create a job and or career that really hits that career sweet spot, then you will be inspired and energized every day. I also note here a lot of an overlooked value of your alumni office. So whatever school you graduated from, they also check with the graduate program or the alumni office. They actually have usually career services. So if you're in a situation where you can't pay for a coach, you're not ready to talk to a recruiter, check with your university alumni office. They have lots of great resources. So somebody mentioned too about kind of like in today's environment, what's going on. So I grabbed this actually off of something that someone I know on LinkedIn posted. This little graphic I thought was so telling about what is going on. So the biggest challenges that companies are faced with now, and Erin, you can talk specifically about the clients that you've been working with, but you know, the loss of revenue that's happening, obviously because of shutdowns or minimized productivity. The pipelines have just dried up. I know I talked to someone who's a professional photographer, and basically their entire business for the rest of the year is dismal because all the events that they were going to photograph are now canceled. Employee safety has become a priority. Lack of travel and FaceTime meetings with prospects, so the sales cycle will be longer or has dried up. Supply issues, so really interesting. Talked to someone in Indiana recently who is a manager and trying to get productivity back up, but the parts that they put together need to be coded by a company and they send it to a company in France, and France is not up and running yet, and so they're stuck. So they have these end products that they're ready that they can't put on the market yet because they're lacking resources. It's really fascinating how this has become a global issue, especially because of supply chains, and also just people not getting back to work yet. Just another example, I ordered a gift for someone, and I'm still waiting for it. They said it was going to be here on the 5th. Obviously, I blew it for Mother's Day. But so, you know, just thinking just globally how staffing and supplier shortages are making it very difficult for companies to get back up and running, and how much they need a re-entry strategy. And they're working on those right now. I've talked to a number of HR colleagues and training and L&D colleagues that I've worked with around the world who are creating new training, new policies, implementations for the reentry. Erin, what are you hearing specifically from any of the clients that you've spoken to?
Yeah, a lot of these same things is, of course, Michelle. I mean, you know, I can speak specifically to the U.S. and even more specifically to the Pacific Northwest here in our country. You know, we work with retail customers and obviously software companies and kind of a broad spectrum. What's I think, you know, has been a very frustrating and sometimes discouraging time is also showing a lot of, you know, creative solutions and a lot of innovation. I don't know that we would have seen had we not been in these circumstances. So, you know, in that way, I think it's interesting and very encouraging. So, you know, what I will say, you know, I was thinking about just collecting my thoughts as I was getting prepared for this. You know, the good news is that there are companies absolutely still hiring. There's still movement in the marketplace, and you know, it's moving maybe at a slower pace than what we're used to. But the good news is that it's still happening out there. So we're talking to our customers every day, and you know, certainly talking about what they're future holds in terms of staffing their organizations, whether with direct hire placements or consulting or contract scenarios. So, I think it's forced us to kind of think outside the box a little bit, but I think some really interesting solutions are going to come out of this time.
Yeah. I think you're right. And actually the person they asked, I think it was you that asked about the open talent network model. What's really fascinating is the people I've talked to, I was talking to the guy who's the head of L&D for Home Depot, and he is rethinking the way he has hired for his team, because he had a great candidate who lived in Tennessee and didn't want to move to the Atlanta area, and he passed on her because he had such a strong inclination that his team needed to be sitting in Atlanta in the office. And now, after 6 or 8 weeks of working with his team remotely, he realizes actually how short-sighted that was. And he was the first to admit it. And he actually called that person from Tennessee back to say, are you still interested? I know it's been 4 or 5 months, but now I see that we can actually work effectively remote. It's really incredible how this has opened up completely different ways of working. And also, just to be specific about the Open Talent Network question, in particular, I've talked with folks at Unilever and Adidas who are absolutely using open talent networks in their model already, and are sharing their process and practices. So for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's basically when a project needs to be worked on internal to the company, they post it, and people internal to the company can apply to work on the project. So they're not limited to the people they know or the people in their current teams, where they can pull from an open talent network throughout their entire global organization. And Erin, the other thing that might be interesting, especially from a technology perspective, is that technology professionals can actually work from anywhere because of the work that they do. So oftentimes companies are very limited to, no, I want someone who works in this particular geography. But actually what we might see from coming out of this situation is people being much more open to a global talent platform. We would have to deal with multiple time zones. I know that because I've managed 125 people in 38 countries. So I know how to juggle the multiple time zones when you have multiple teams in different scenarios and different countries and time zones, but it can be done. It absolutely can be done.
100%. We're seeing that. We're already, to your point, we're seeing that in talking with a number of our customers that, as you mentioned, we're pretty bent on, keeping everybody in the same geography, and that's changing. I think we're starting to blur the boundaries a little bit and giving opportunity outside of our, immediate state, et cetera. So it's an interesting shift.
And just an observation from my part, what is limiting the ability for companies to actually do that and for candidates to do their job search that way is the job boards. They make you put in a zip code or a city or a location. It limits you to looking for companies that are actually within your geography, instead of being able to apply to jobs that are only that could be done virtually. So more and more job postings are saying virtual is an option, and hopefully we'll start to see more of that, and hopefully we'll also start to see that as an option on job boards. You can put in a keyword search at least for virtual. So if something is virtual, it can come up. But a lot of job boards and a lot of recruiters are going to need to rethink how they post jobs because of that. Just a few things to prompt us, a few bullets here. Be prepared to ask about the current situation and be empathetic to their current situation. Even though you might be frustrated in your job search, and I've talked to a few people who are just sick and tired of talking with recruiters when there's actually no job open. So this is unfortunately something that where there was a job posted a few months ago, it's still posted, but maybe because of the current situation, they're reevaluating whether they're going to fill that job. So it might not actually be a real job opening. Just have a little bit more patience and grace for the people who are in these situations. And the bullet number 3 is interesting because we always expect hiring managers to be able to answer all our questions, but if you actually get to a point where you've interviewed with a hiring manager, just be prepared that they may, at this moment, not have all your answers. And so you're going to have a little personal agility and personal adaptability in the situation. It's very frustrating, but there are definitely people hiring. Like you said, companies are hiring. And so be prepared. We're getting back to what we just said. What is your longer term aspiration? Why would you be qualified for the job? What gets you excited about their job? Be prepared to articulate ways that you could add immediate value based on the current situation, and then longer term value. So take the current situation and actually change it to your advantage. Frame it so that you can make an immediate practice of helping them with their sales cycle immediately, or employee safety immediately, or you're very good at training people, so you could be on the re-entry training team, things like that. Just be creative. But speaking of who's hiring, in preparation for this, I did a quick search on LinkedIn and found that there's a list on LinkedIn called Who's Hiring Right Now. So you can use that as a resource. I just took all the different they actually have company names listed, but I just took it more on an industry aggregation basis to let you know these are industries that are absolutely hiring. And if you think about it, maybe they don't necessarily say they have an HR job open, for example, right now. But if they're hiring 3,000 more people, I can pretty much guarantee you they probably have a need somewhere in their HR department if they're adding that many people. If they are looking at doing business differently, then they're also going to have HR type jobs. Finance jobs are also being posted. I've certainly seen a lot in the operations and business analyst type roles. And then also in each of these, don't forget that even though these are industry specific, every one of them has corporate functions as well as industry specific. So Erin, what are your thoughts specifically, because you are in the Pacific Northwest, you work with global technology-based companies. What are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, I mean, some of these, obviously all of these ring true. I think just as a general statement, and somebody brought up gig economy or gig opportunities. Traditionally, and again, I can speak to the US and my region specifically, when we see an impact to the marketplace like this, we generally will see a significant, or in the past we've seen significant cuts in direct hire or full-time opportunities. And what is typically first to recover will be consulting and contractor gig type opportunities first. Companies realize that they cut relatively deep, and then as things recover, realize, oh, we still have all this work we've got to accomplish, and now we don't have the people here to do that. So, I think, to your point, there's certainly still opportunity out there. I think it's really important as you're thinking about industries or specific companies that you're pursuing to keep an open mind. If you're used to being in a full-time capacity, you maybe consider some consulting scenarios. And it's a great way to get your foot in the door and really, prove yourself and prove your worth. So, yeah, hopefully that makes sense. But
that's a great point. I'm so glad you said that, actually, because also on the LinkedIn article, it said there's been a 38% drop in full-time job postings in March and April, given the scenario that we're in right now. However, the work still needs to get done. So I think part of the reentry, and this is really kind of longer term thinking that I'm doing with some of my clients, but they're going to actually rehire fewer full-time employees because they need some more flexibility, and they need to have that flexibility for the peak seasons, and also slowly and phasing people back to work. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a huge opportunity for contract workers because of this. And there are some platforms that are specifically for contract work. Specifically, for example, Randstad, right? Randstad does permanent placement, but also contract work. So you could look at Randstad website within your country. Also, I know in the U.S., and I honestly apologize, I don't know if this is a global job board, but Flex Jobs is an interesting one that, as consultants, unfortunately, they require you to join. I really dislike the job boards that require a fee for you, because it's really the client that should be paying. But unfortunately, there are some that will charge you like an annual fee for like $45 or $90 a year. In the US, AARP, actually, for those of you who might be in the 45 and older, there are actually some great gig jobs posted on the AARP website. We call that the silver talent pool. And also within your own country, there are probably gig type job boards. Twago is one that Randstad is affiliated with, but there are others. So my fail-safe is Google. So if you're looking for a contract website, contract job board, Google contract job boards, and you'd be surprised how many resources are available to you. Indeed is a global job board, and so is Monster. Used in many, many different countries. I saw CV Library also is very heavily used across different European countries. They have not just full-time jobs posted, but also contract jobs as well. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And JS has some great questions here. Please share examples of employers or clients interested in working with consultants located internationally. Probably not going to be able to answer that specific question, but email the Star and Me, hello@thestarandme.com, and we will absolutely get you some very specific answers for that. Okay, on to some more tips. So what should I be doing to get started? And Erin, since your background, you come originally from internal company recruiter background, and also now leading professional recruiter teams, I'll leave this one to you.
Yeah, no, this is great. So, and definitely an area of passion for me. So I'll take this slide, no problem. So, you know, what do internal companies and recruiters look for? You know, a lot of it's the things that we've said. You know, they're going to be looking for individuals that, you know, can clearly articulate your background. And sometimes that's difficult to do via a LinkedIn profile or via a resume. So I encourage you to be as active as you feel comfortable on social network tools like a LinkedIn. Some of us are you know, more active than others and are more comfortable with a tool like that than others. But and what I mean by that is, you know, finding articles, commenting on articles, things like that, to just show that your interest level. You know, when recruiters are looking for candidates, the question on here is, how do recruiters do their searches? A lot of it is via LinkedIn. You know, when I first started, way back in the day, we didn't have quite as much in the way of LinkedIn searching and things like that, we were primarily using job boards and other avenues, which are certainly still
you
relevant.
were using newspapers. Come on.
Phone books. Yeah, we were going door to door, basically. But a lot of it is just networking via LinkedIn. So I think about it in terms of kind of a spider web. We're not necessarily, our recruiters aren't necessarily specifically going to, they'll do a search, but if they're not identifying the candidates within that particular, very specific search, they'll start to build out from their network and ask for introductions and things like that. So it's really important that you are connected, reach out to people and connect with people so that you're front of mind. If folks are asking for introductions, I think a LinkedIn profile is really important right now. And how can I be found on LinkedIn? We see the gamut. So sometimes we'll look at a profile and it's pretty obvious if someone's not been active for a long time, or if you see that their connections are pretty, a low number of connections. So I think it's really important to really build out that robust profile so that it articulates, again, your experience and really what you're passionate about. Those that invest the time up front, I think are getting more hits, so to speak. And certainly reach outs from recruiters and direct, corporate recruiters. So absolutely.
Can I add to that also, yeah, Erin, if you don't mind? What's really interesting, and I actually started my career as an internal recruiter too. And what I have found after working both as an internal recruiter many years ago, when we still use the newspaper for job postings, but also as working at Randstad for so many years, the internal company recruiter is very, very specifically looking to fill that job, right? And what I find so often is that the internal company recruiters, when they post a job, and they are usually actually reviewing resumes that have been submitted. So it's a lot of times one way. Internal company recruiters rarely spend time building relationships with people for not just the jobs that they have open now, but future jobs in their pipeline that they know will come up from a client at some point, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of times too, people ask me, why should I talk to a professional recruiter like at Randstad? There's plenty of other staffing firms out there. But the answer I always give is because even though they might not have a job open in the moment, they have a database, right? Mm-hmm. And Erin, you and I know at Randstad, 350 million people in the database. Yeah. Right. And so they have their own internal database of people who have been vetted and spoken to. And there's a file, if you will, with more information about what that recruiter found out from you. So it's almost like they know you, mm-hmm. versus if they're just doing a search on LinkedIn, they may look then for you in the database to see if anyone from Randstad or Adecco or someone else, might have talked to you, and knows you, and have we placed you before type of thing. Like Erin said, there are people that she's known for years that are reaching out to her now that she may have placed in the past and now would like to be placed again. It's actually more of a relationship with a professional recruiter than an internal company recruiter who basically is paid to fill that job and that job only. And if they talk to you as a pre-screen and you're not a candidate for that job, they're going to get off the phone with you as fast as possible because mm-hmm. they need to go on to candidates who can fill the job. Right. So it's really interesting. I talk to people who have been talking to internal recruiters, and they say, they ask me all these questions, but then they're not really interested in talking about anything else. And it's like, well, that's not their job. Right. Their job is to fill the job as soon as possible. And so don't take it personally, but a professional recruiter might take a little bit more time, get to know you a little bit more, especially about both your immediate needs, but also some long-term aspirations. Find out a little bit more about the work environments that you've worked in that pre-screen. Mm-hmm. There was a question, Erin, there's a couple. One is, how much information should you add to the description or your education of work experience? on LinkedIn, and then also considering the unemployment rates in the US, are there sectors that you think are more affected than others? Honestly, you can that information is so widely posted right now on both Google, LinkedIn, and other webinars that are available on the internet. So, but if you have anything specific, and also one thing that's really interesting that I talk to people a lot, and maybe you can shed some light on this, they spend so much time on their resume and very little time on their LinkedIn profile. And what I tell them is, if someone is searching passive candidates who aren't necessarily posting for jobs, the LinkedIn profile is your way to get found. They don't never even see your resume if you don't send it directly to them. So can you talk a little bit about your own experience and on what you would recommend?
Yes, and don't look at my LinkedIn profile because it still requires a lot of work. So I'm not the shining example of
You can look at mine. My LinkedIn profile.
I want to make a note and get working on mine. But yeah, in fact, I had this example yesterday. I was working with one of our sales guys. We have a search for one of our customers. They're looking for a mobile software development manager. And we were just doing quick searches via LinkedIn to just see, who within our network might have that specific experience, or maybe be connected to somebody that has that specific experience. And what is probably more common than not is very brief descriptions within your LinkedIn profile, as you mentioned, Michelle. So maybe a job title and a couple of bullet points, if that. Those LinkedIn profiles, again, that are more robust and speaking very specifically about what you're responsible for and your scope of influence, is very, very helpful to be noticed, again, via LinkedIn, which is largely what most recruiters and companies are going to be utilizing as they're looking to identify candidates. So it's easy to get passed up because we're just clicking and trying to, identify those candidates that we feel are going to be the closest match. And without that level of detail, it's really hard to stand out. So I absolutely encourage that you invest that time to build out your LinkedIn profile just as you would a resume. And, I think resumes are important, and there's a question on here as to whether or not a resume is necessary. The answer is yes. There's still a lot of organizations as you get into the interview process that are going to want to see a built out resume. So absolutely invest that time. But don't do that in lieu of building a solid LinkedIn profile. There's just so much to that right now. And it's just, like I said, it's just so widely used that it's important to spend the time there.
Absolutely. And interesting how I mentioned before, Indeed is a worldwide job board. So just looking at the next question about job boards, but there are so many. And I pulled this little graphic off of a webinar that I had attended. It's just overwhelming how many job boards there are worldwide. But Erin, talk a little bit from your expertise too about specialty job boards, because probably, especially in technology, you might actually use a number of specialty job boards. I know in healthcare, there are specialty job boards, and education, there are specialty job boards. So talk a little about how we can use job boards for our job search.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think to your point, there's so many tools and so many resources out there. So don't limit yourself to just, sort of the traditional job boards that we've all heard of. Get smart on things like that, especially those that are specific to a specific niche, as Michelle mentioned. This is somewhat relevant, but I don't want to lose the thought. As you are looking for opportunities and maybe working with a recruiter or maybe not, it's also important, I think, to be reaching out to individuals within that organization and doing it in obviously a professional manner. But if you're showing that you've got passion around that particular organization, you've heard really great things, they've got a good culture, whatever it is of research that you've done, as you identify opportunities on some of these job boards, it is appropriate to reach out to, specific individuals, even individual contributors at that company, and say, hey, I see that you work here. I'd love to learn more. What keeps you happy at this organization? I saw this posting, would love some insight. And just, again, it's just that level of comfort and confidence to just reach out and start those conversations for yourself. And again, even if you are working with a specific recruiter who's helping you with that search, it's absolutely appropriate for you to be having some other conversations as you continue to build your network.
Yeah. So a little trick I use, this no extra charge for this, but I'll give you a little secret. What I often do with my clients is that we look at job boards, especially specific niche job boards if they are in a specific career. And we look at the job boards not necessarily for that particular job, but also because titles vary from company to company. A specialist versus an analyst versus someone who's a manager, but it might not be a manager of people, might be a functional manager. It's so interesting how titles levels, they can vary quite a bit from company to company. So we do an exercise of looking at a job board of which companies are hiring. So it's like, take a step back and look at this holistically. What are the companies who are posting those jobs? And then you know they're hiring, right? And then if they don't have a specific job open that you can reply to, that's where your network comes in, or that's where your opportunity to even say, and I do this again, this is another little pearl, no extra charge here. I find a company that's hiring, I go into LinkedIn, and I type the company name, and then I search on people. And usually, if I don't have a first connection there, it will bring up second connections of people in that company that I know is hiring because they have jobs posted. And I know someone who knows someone. Mm-hmm. And I look and see where that connection is. I also look and see what jobs those people are in. So I'm working with a client right now who's in finance. She's actually an accountant looking to become a financial analyst. So to add to Subha's question there about roles and positions and what companies are hiring and how can you change your career aspirations. So this is an example of someone I'm working with. This is exactly what we did. And she has been an accountant for 8 years. Her degree is finance. She also sells real estate. So what we're looking for is a company that is in an adjacent type of industry like real estate, whether that be a finance oriented real estate support organization or some companies that build or run software related to accounting for the real estate industry, some things that are going to get her passion and interests in real estate connected with her career aspiration in finance, right? So you see, these are pieces to the puzzle. And then we looked at the companies that are hiring in that type of industry. And even though there wasn't a finance analyst position posted in the company she's targeting, we looked at who do we know in that company, and we found someone in the finance department. And we reached out to them. Right? And we just said, hey, I don't see any jobs posted, but I'd love to know more about what the finance team in this company does, because here's my background, and if there's ever an opportunity in the future. So guess what? Now she's connected to someone in finance in her target company, right? And look at the way that she's presumed initiative. Right? And she's proactively reached out. So just a little example of the way that a career coach can also help you in your job search, looking really holistically, using the job boards, using your network, and targeting certain companies that you're interested in. I highly recommend, if there's a work environment or a company that you absolutely want to get into because you've heard great things about it, you can absolutely target those companies. The other thing that job boards do really well is they give you feedback on what people have posted about working in those companies. Certain countries are more active on these types of rating systems than others, and you also have to look at it with some skepticism, because a lot of times, maybe sometimes only the dissatisfied people are posting, but we are starting to see now a lot more balance in how people are giving feedback both pros and cons. You can look at Glassdoor, for example, tells you the pros and cons. And if the con is specifically about a certain manager, don't necessarily take that as the whole company is like that. So things like that. And then, Erin, you mentioned too the social media and responding on LinkedIn, but I want to also talk about a little bit about the other social media you might be posting, because one of my career coach clients had some things posted on her Facebook that I asked her to actually, if she could remove, because as someone who would be a hiring manager, I wouldn't have appreciated some of the things that she had posted. What are your thoughts around that?
100%. I would say recruiters will look at that as we're, starting to represent candidates out in the marketplace. It's just so widely used and so accessible. So, you think about the things that you're putting online that you would want a prospect employer to look to be seeing. It's important because there's so much access out there. So yeah, 100%. It's one of those things that I would say 9 times out of 10, somebody in your interview loop is probably going to check out anything else that you've got posted out on social media. So
yeah, and if you don't know this, there are ways to make certain things private and certain things public.
yeah.
So if you're not familiar with the security settings on your social media platforms, please check them out, because you might want to make some things private if you don't want to take them down, especially if they are political views, and if they are extreme political views, especially in the US.
Great. Yeah, say no more.
Because you never know which side of the fence the hiring manager is on. So
less is more.
All right, let's move on then. Please keep putting your questions in the chat. We're happy to incorporate them into the conversation. So in this day and age, if you haven't already have a virtual interview, I'd be surprised. But virtual interviews now are a necessity. And so often, some companies, and Rasa is a big proponent of digital interviewing, which is a one-way digital platform. So Erin, I was wondering if you're comfortable talking about Montage, or the video interviewing platform, because I have found a lot of people that this is kind of new to them. So what does that even look like?
Oh my gosh, yes. So we leverage, as Michelle mentioned, Montage. But we're also seeing other tools obviously being leveraged. Zoom is a perfect example. So it's really, if we have customers or clients that don't have one that they've, particular to, we'll leverage our own tools that we have access to internally. But really, there's so many to Teams, Zoom, Google Hangout, there's just so many. So I think the important thing is to get comfortable with how to navigate, understand where the mute button is so that you take yourself off mute, et cetera, et cetera. But it's definitely, obviously it's being leveraged so much more now than I think it ever has been. And it's interesting, especially in the US, to see how fast companies are adapting to this. There's opportunities to, if you're in technology, where you can do some whiteboarding with some of the tools so they can actually, glean what your technology aptitude is in certain skill sets, et cetera. So if you've not played around with some of these tools, I would encourage you to get comfortable so that you are not fumbling your way through an interview, because interviews are already typically not comfortable anyway. So you want to make sure that you alleviate any distraction in how you're navigating whatever system it is that they're using.
Yeah. And so that's if you're in an interactive interview, and that we've got a whole bunch of tips there. The digital interview, one of the things that's really interesting, one of my clients was applying to Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola has a digital interview requirement. The recruiters don't even talk to a live individual until after they have viewed the digital interview. So some of the larger companies that do high volume hiring are moving to a digital pre-screen, where you log in and they have 4 or 5 questions that they want you to answer before, as a pre-screen, before they even will look at your profile or your application to see how you react, if you're a fit, the way you answer those questions. The other really cool thing, and Randstad has been doing this across the world, is recording a digital interview or virtual interview with a candidate and then sending a recording to the hiring manager. So the hiring manager can actually do a virtual pre-screen before they even talk to people live, because they will hear things or they will notice things that may or may not be relevant, or they will be get very encouraged about interviewing someone in person or live anyway. After they see the virtual interview, they're like, I like this person, I like the way they answered this question and this question. They're showing a lot of initiative. Interesting, they brought that up. I hadn't even thought about that. So I'm seeing a lot of value in pre-recorded digital interviews that are one way. So really uncomfortable, like you said, Erin, even more uncomfortable than in just a web-based interview, but you're basically answering a question and recording. But no matter whether you are,
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, yes, I realized I skipped ahead to the virtual interview, but
no,
I
that's
think
okay.
It's a great way to differentiate yourself. And to your point, Michelle, most of us don't love seeing ourselves on video, but it is a great differentiator. And it's even now still a creative avenue to pursue, because, at least I can speak in the US, we don't do it enough. But if you're, you're sending your resume, why not? Try it. I think it's a worthwhile exercise for sure.
Yeah. One of the other things too is on the digital interview, by the way, if you don't like your answer, you can record it again. So there's an advantage, because if you're in a virtual interview, it's out there, can't take it back. So it lets you practice a little bit too. So it's interesting. You'll also see these bullets. These are probably things you don't already know, but really great checklist. Test your system and check all of your Wi-Fi, all of that. Avoid large patterns and bright colors on video, only because some video cameras and the quality of, depending on your Wi-Fi, that might actually be distracting. Control your environment. It's a little difficult with 3-year-olds running around behind you right now, but try your best to be in a quiet environment. If you're doing a virtual interview, just like you would when you're visiting a company, do your research on the company, look at their website, look at online reviews, look at any connections that you have there, anything that will give you a leg up in the conversation for the virtual interview. Please don't ever go into an interview without having done your research on the company. I know as a hiring manager, that is the first thing I say in the interview is, so, I'm assuming you had a chance to look at the website. What do you want to know about the company before we get into actually me telling you about the job in specific? That is a weed out question. I use it all the time. So if you haven't done your homework, I will know it. And practice your talking points. So we talked about the why and why you would be passionate about what you're looking for. So practice that. Don't let your interview be the first time you talk openly about it. Practice in front of the mirror. Practice in front of your kids. Practice in front of the teddy bears. It doesn't matter. Just say it out loud so it becomes more natural. And be prepared with questions. My last point, I can't tell you how many times I've been on interviews, and Erin, you probably have too, either where the power on the computer goes out, or those headphones that people wear, all of a sudden, like they're talking and nothing's happening, and it's because their headphones weren't fully charged. So don't fall into that. I also wanted to mention too that the Star in Me has a profile builder. And you can do a video resume. So if you really want to be proactive, you can actually create a video of yourself, a video resume, and then proactively send it to a recruiter. Wouldn't you look differentiated? And
Yeah.
that's a great service that the Star and Me platform offers. How are we doing on time? Let me do a time check here.
We have 15 more minutes, and I think there are a lot of questions that I see already. How many
Okay.
slides do we have, Michelle?
Yeah, we'll go through a little more quickly the rest of these slides.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the virtual interviews that the problem is that people don't make eye contact into the camera. So just wanted to bring that up. But all these other things are really things that you would do both in a virtual interview and also in a personal interview. Right, Erin? I mean, what are your thoughts?
No, 100%. And, you know, I think one of the things that always comes to mind for me is, you know, you mentioned talking points. I think especially when we're uncomfortable, it may be cause for rambling or just not having a concise message. So, you know, do practice, because that is probably one of the biggest pet peeves from interviewers or customers where I get feedback, is just not concise, well-articulated answers that just go on and on and on. And then by the end of the interview, you know, they didn't get to all their questions. So, you know, practice that for sure. And if you're unsure of whether or not you've given enough information, it's better to be concise and ask if they'd like you to expand.
Yeah. Yeah, and absolutely, when I get thank you letters, I don't want to see, as a hiring manager, just, you know, thanks for your time, look forward to hearing from you. I actually look for a hard close. I look for a restatement of the interest in the role, why you're qualified, why you think you're the best person for the job. Your job is to sell yourself. And every opportunity, whether it's your LinkedIn profile, your resume, your pre-screen, your interview with the recruiter, your hiring manager, and your thank you note, every single one of those is an opportunity to sell yourself on why you're the best candidate. Okay. All right, moving on. This is just something I talk to women about all the time. I won't spend too much time on this, but please, please, please know your worth. If you don't know the value of your work, you can't expect others to recognize it either. There is always a pay scale. You do not want to find yourself on the left side of the pay scale all the time. You want to go for the high side, the right side of the pay scale. You need to believe in yourself. You need to demonstrate your confidence in your skills and really sell yourself and the differentiators that you bring to the relationship. And if you absolutely have no idea on what the job should pay, the job itself that you're applying for, you can look online. There's things like salary.com. If you're working with a recruiter, they should definitely be able to give you an understanding of what the client salary range is. And again, salary ranges differ from company to company. So don't make any assumptions. Make sure you're very clear on what your value is. And I talk to a lot of women where we go through some exercises about believing that you are good enough. So I won't spend time on this right now, but if you find that you do have a self-esteem or a confidence issue, you absolutely should be working with someone to help you overcome that, because you are good enough and you absolutely deserve the compensation and pay level that that comes with whatever job it is you're applying for. And yes, you should absolutely negotiate. Whoever is that question, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your name, but should we negotiate our wages in the pandemic time? Absolutely, you should always negotiate. They can always say no, but you still have the job offer. So definitely put your best foot into negotiating what you deserve and what you need. So very, very quickly, Erin and I thought it would be interesting to talk about what to expect very quickly once you get the job. So congratulations, you did a great job search, you used your network effectively, and you got the job. If you have only taken onboarding in a face-to-face environment, in person in a company, I will tell you that onboarding virtually is very different. I've done it many, many times because of the people I've worked with all over the world. But just be prepared that you have online paperwork versus in-person paperwork. You're going to have to learn about the company culture, a new joiner information in a virtual environment, obviously, and you're going to meet the team in a Zoom meeting, probably. The team that you're working with, your key stakeholders, you'll be onboarded by someone virtually. And if you are a manager being hired into a management position, already start thinking about how you can start to get to know your team. How can they get to know you? How can you get to know them? What are the things that you want to know as soon as possible? Things like success measures for the team, feedback from internal customers about your team, and but give yourself a couple months to listen and learn. It's a lot more difficult to do this, but a lot more companies are moving actually to virtual onboarding, so they're getting better at it. So I think actually we answered a lot of the questions as we were going. Somebody asked specifically about my remark about politics. So I think you already have your answer, but your question is that you're volunteering for a group that has a political view. Should this be on your job board? So this could work to your advantage, or it could be a disadvantage, depending on who is hiring you. So I will leave it up to you, but determine whether it's an advantage or disadvantage, and it also depends on how right or left that group is, and how vocal and how negative they are in their postings. So, because if you're representing them, then it's not even just what you say, it's what they say in social media. Erin, somebody wanted to know, how do you connect to hiring managers proactively and ask for a job? Does that work at all?
Yeah, I think it goes back to sort of what we're saying and sort of that reverse LinkedIn search, I'll call it. So if you identify an opportunity on the job board and you're looking to identify who potentially might be responsible or the decision maker for that role, and doing some research and connecting through introductions, LinkedIn, whatever the mechanism you choose to use, I think it's appropriate to inquire 100% and talk about, I'd love to connect with you and understand. It looks like you might be the decision maker for this particular role. I'd love an opportunity to connect with you and learn from you and figure out the best way for my resume to get in front of you and the right people in the process. So yeah, I absolutely think it works. I think it's another way to just be advocating for yourself. I've been writing myself some notes. At the end of the day, I think right now, what I've seen out there is that everybody really wants to help. I think there's a lot of people that are willing to do the extra legwork and willing to speak with folks that are needing work or looking to make a change right now. It's just, I'm seeing a lot of people come together that may not normally have, which is so encouraging, and it's really, really nice to see. And maybe it's not even something that they're going to ultimately benefit from, but just helping people make connections. So know that going in, that you're not asking for anything that's way out of line, and likely you would do the same for somebody else if someone were asking for an introduction or just some information. So it's heartwarming for me to see individuals step up and really try to make a change or help people that they may not have any personal gain from.
Yeah, absolutely. And going in any way you can with a positive attitude. I just want to reiterate that, because it's a very difficult time. Everybody's stressed. The more positive you can be, knowing what you're grateful for, looking at the experiences that you've had in the past and what have you learned from them, whether they were good or bad. Sometimes we learn the most from bad experiences. I learned how to be a great manager from a lousy one. I knew exactly what I didn't want to be, because he was horrible and I was never going to do that when I became a manager. So you can always learn from your experiences, know what your passions are, where your drive is. It can really, really help being a viable candidate that somebody wants to talk to. That's really important. So just a quick summary, get started. I love to visualize. I do this with my friends, with my coaching clients. We do vision boards. So if you're a visual person, visualize what your plan and your success looks like. What are you looking for? We usually have a glass of wine and some scissors and some glue and some magazines, and we sit around and we create the vision of our success. So once you've identified your why, what your career spot, your sweet spot is, you have some kind of plan for your job search based on what we talked about using job boards and your network. Visualize your plan and just start taking steps in that direction, using those resources, enrolling others in your process. Be prepared, but also relax, because as Erin said earlier, things are not happening at the fast pace that they used to. So give it time. It doesn't also have to be perfect. Work it over time, but also give yourself some grace. We all have to do that right now. It's really important. I'm putting in a little plug for Randstad because Erin did get up at 6 a.m. today to be with us. So, but I also have some amazing colleagues who work in Randstad India. I know many of you are dialing in from India. Fantastic recruiters who would love to hear from you and get to know you. You can see all the types of jobs here and the locations that they service. And Randstad USA, Randstad Technologies in particular, if you're looking for a job in the technology space. And Randstad also has some great COVID-19 getting back to work and the new normal resources as well. So just a shameless plug there for my Randstad colleagues. And again, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your time. Here's our email addresses if you're interested. As I mentioned, I'm also on the Star and Me platform. Feel free to link in with me or connect with me on the platform as well. Amawa, you want to say anything to wrap up?
Yeah, I know we just maybe have a few more minutes. I was just wondering, did we cover this question that had come up? How can we identify whether certain roles or positions will remain active once the new normal is defined and businesses are up for recruiting? Many who are laid off are thinking of changing their career.
Yeah.
This is to understand when one should look at changing their career or job. So yeah, a little complex statement, but I know it's not easy to respond, but if you would want to give a...
Well, I touched on it a little bit. There is no time like the present to make a change. And companies are hiring, depending on what the job change is and how far it is from what your experience is. The farther away it is from what your experience is, the harder it will be to make a job change. But companies are hiring. There are critical roles within companies and new roles that are being created right now because of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So the answer is yes, it's a great time, and yes, if you want to make a career change, it's okay. A career coach or a recruiter can work with you to identify the transferable skills. This is a really important thing to talk about, because you might have a job title and experience and exposure in a certain job classification your whole career. But what are the skills that you are demonstrating that can be transferred to another kind of role? Project management, for example. There's project managers in IT. There's project managers in finance. There's project managers in HR. There's project managers in marketing. If you're a data-oriented person, have you ever thought about looking at data scientists? There's data scientists in technology. There's data science in marketing. There's data science in finance. There's data science in HR. So what are the knowledge, experience, and transferable skills? And working with someone like myself, I work with my clients all the time to really identify what those superpowers are and the strengths and the experience and how to package it so that you can make a change. I see it all the time.
Great, great. And in fact, while we were talking and there were a lot of questions coming, I'm sure all of it can't be answered in this 90 minutes conversation. So we just went ahead and opened this group called Job Search Resources on the Star Me platform. Yeah, Michelle, you're already there, and Erin, we would invite you to be on the platform so that you can join the group. And we just posted some of those assessment tools that you talked about, Michelle. just to start off with, but I'm sure I'll encourage people to join. Already few of them in the call has joined that group, to be there and ask your questions so that the conversations can keep going and the needed aid can be given as needed, either through career coaching or any other resources. And yeah, if Erin is there, then any kind of interventions you need, or you want to share your profiles to Randstad, be it India or US or any other country, that will, you have any questions, you can ask there. Are there any final last question that we can take? Just one last question. All right. Doesn't seem like we are just on time, and thanks a lot, Erin and Michelle. I do not, Michelle, it is morning for you, but I'm really extra thankful for Erin to join at an early time. And Michelle, you are talking unmute. All right.
I know I was having somebody coming down the stairs in a loud voice, and they were just about to ask me a question, so I had to mute. Sorry.
All right, no problem. So yeah, thank you, and all of you on the call today. You did ask how will you get access to this recording. We are creating a place on the Star and Me platform where we will give you access, and you can use this whenever you want to. So it will be there. So at your leisure, if you again want to go through some sections, do go through it. And thank you. Have a great rest of the evening, night, wherever you're joining us from. Just keep communicating, and all the best to all of you. Thank you.
And thank you, Erin. I appreciate so much having you on with me. This was fun.
Great. Thank
Appreciate
you both.
it.
Yeah, good to see you.
Really, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mama.
Bye. Thank you.